ben ik weer, Joop Soesan uit Ierjemien in Israël, met mijn podcast. Ja, zoals u weet wordt dit een bijzondere podcast. Ik heb namelijk over een paar minuten een gesprek met mevrouw Olga Deutsch. Zij is directeur van NGO Monitor hier in Israël, de organisatie die in de gaten houdt wat er met, laten we zeggen, de zogenaamde Palestijnse hulpgelden vanuit Nederland en andere Europese landen gebeurt. En zij heeft wat nieuws voor ons te melden. En dat wou ze graag in de podcast doen. En natuurlijk gaan we dat zo meteen allemaal van haar horen. Het is wel in het Engels, maar ik weet uit eerdere podcast waar ik een Engels sprekende gast in had, dat gelukkig voor bijna iedereen geen probleem is. We zullen er namelijk ook een korte vertaling bij doen later in een artikel. Maar laten we eerst zoals gebruikelijk even beginnen met het weer in Israël. Ja, wat moet ik er nog over zeggen? Ook vandaag weer 36 graden, blauwe lucht. En zo blijft het voorlopig nog wel even doorgaan. We hebben wel van de week even een regenbuitje gehad, maar ja, dat was uitzonderlijk. Dus dat was ook headline nieuws, het openingsnieuws ook op de journaals. Maar goed, dat duurde maar een paar minuten. En dan voor de rest, ja, de politieke situatie in Israël. Het is nog steeds, laten we maar op z'n Hollands zeggen, een zootje. Als u op joods.nl kijkt, daar staat het allemaal. Er komt nog meer op in de komende 2 dagen. Want we houden de vinger aan de pols. Ja, premier Netanyahu doet alles, verzinnen allerlei trucs om aan de macht te blijven. Om zijn invloed ook zodanig te versterken dat hij zelfs van plan is om rechters te gaan vervangen. Een van de Likud-leden uit het parlement, uit de Knesset, heeft daartoe een verzoek ingediend. Ze willen een rechter in de rechtszaak tegen hem vervangen. Nou, dat betekent dat er dan een vertraging van minimaal een jaar optreedt. Er worden allerlei trucs uitgehaald om te zorgen dat hij niet 19 januari, vanaf 19 januari 3 keer in de week in de rechtbank moet staan. Hoe dat gaat aflopen, de demonstraties zijn nog steeds wekelijks aan de gang, komende zaterdagavond weer. Er is een hele hoop om te doen. Dat hou je niet meer tegen, dat breidt zich alleen maar uit en we zullen zien waar dat verder toe leidt. In ieder geval in de peilingen is de Likud behoorlijk aan het dalen en staat nu op maximaal 29 zetels. Terwijl de oppositiepartijen, vooral Bennett en Yair Lapid, behoorlijk winnen, beide op 19 zetels uitkomen. Wat betreft het coronavirus, dat gaat niet goed. We zitten nog steeds rond de 1700, 1800 nieuwe besmettingen per dag. Er zijn gisteren 21 mensen overleden, dat is nog nooit zoveel geweest. We zitten nu op 643 doden inmiddels, dat gaat erg hard. Men denkt dat over 2 weken het iets gaat afnemen, de stijging iets gaat afnemen. We zullen het zien, want op 1 september beginnen wel de scholen natuurlijk. En of dat dan nog doorgaat met een zulke stijging zoals we nu hebben, ik weet het niet. Maar goed, we zullen het gaan afwachten, we gaan het allemaal meemaken. En u leest dat allemaal natuurlijk op joods.nl. En dan ga ik nu contact zoeken met Olga Deutsch. En eens kijken wat zij te melden heeft over de Nederlandse betalingen aan Palestijnse organisaties die zich voornamelijk bezighouden met terreur en niets doen met het geld om de bevolking te helpen. Maar goed, dat gaat zij u allemaal uitleggen. Ik stel een paar vragen. Ik heb een voorgesprekje met haar gehad, dat mag u rustig weten. Dus ik weet al welke kant het uitgaat. En ja, zij gaat best een paar dingen zeggen waarvan ik denk bij mezelf, had ik dan ook weer niet verwacht. Maar in ieder geval, ik ga haar nu even bellen. En dan kom ik met een paar seconden weer bij u terug. Ogenblikje graag. Oké, nou is het natuurlijk niet zo ver als in Nederland, want het is hier allemaal in Israël waar Olga zit. In ieder geval, ik heb Olga Deutsch aan de lijn. Zij is geen directeur, maar ik moet zeggen Vice President of NGO Monitor. Olga, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, Joop. It's a pleasure to be with you. I am very good, thank you. I
Okay,
hope everyone in the Netherlands is also doing great today.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. It's a great honor to have you in our podcast. And I know we made a pre-announcement yesterday that a lot of people are waiting to hear what you have to tell us. Let me give. Let me start with the following. We made an article last year on October 3rd about a Palestinian terrorist, Samer Arbit, who was arrested, being involved in the killing of Rina Schnurp, the 70-year-old girl who was murdered by Palestinian terrorists. And he was connected to an NGO which was financed by several European states, among them, of course, the Netherlands. How did you discover this?
First of all, the honor is all mine. Thank you for inviting me to join this important discussion and giving me a platform to share a little bit more about what we do and the events that happened basically in the last year. Rina Schnurp was killed exactly a year ago.
Yeah.
And following, she was hiking with her family. Her father and her brother were also wounded, but she unfortunately died in the terror attack. The terror attack was accredited, or the responsibility was taken by a Palestinian terror organization, PFLP, the Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine. It is a terror organization designated as such by the European Union, which means the Netherlands as well, US, Canada, and obviously Israel. The Israeli security forces arrested a 50 people terror cell.
Yes.
Of the terror organization PFLP, and basically only in December the Israeli media discovered the names of some of the people arrested, and among those names that were released to the media, at least 5 were senior officials, so senior employees on a payroll by at least 3 Palestinian human rights and humanitarian NGOs. Samir Arbid worked for a Palestinian organization, Agricultural Union of Work Committees. It's a Palestinian NGO that actually deals with huge infrastructural projects in the fields of water and agriculture and infrastructure. And this is an NGO that is funded by, as you rightly pointed out, by the European Union, the EU, the UN, and many, many other governments, the Netherlands included. The way we found out, and that's probably the funniest part of this story always, is just Googling and searching. That's all we do.
Yeah.
A lot of times people ask us, how in the world did you get to this information? And we make it a point that we don't have any special intelligence softwares or capacities. All the information that we present in our reports and our research is open source, so publicly available to anyone who can use Google. Because part of the point that we are trying to make is that if we can find this information, then any government could find it too. It
True.
Shouldn't be that difficult.
No. We, by the way, hello? Are you there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Okay. We, by the way, published this article on December 18 last year, and it was shared by a lot of people with all the information you discovered and the information we discovered. So for us, it's still, let's say, strange, a little bit strange, that the Dutch government did not act after all this information was published.
Well, I wish that the first moment where this became a relevant story was in December when the names were published.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. We've been pointing to clear connections between this particular NGO, but many others as well, to the terror organization PFLP. We've been showing that most of their board members and most of their employees are not only not trying to hide, but they are proud. They take pride at showing their affiliation to the terror organization PFLP on their social media, personal accounts, and so on. They participate in PFLP events and, freely use their flags and glorify violence and everything the PFLP does. So, unfortunately, it had to come to an actual terror attack. But we've been trying to alert European governments for years now that there are suspicious and very dangerous connections between who they give money and they trust these organizations to provide humanitarian aid and do human rights work to terror groups. So the Dutch government, and no other government, by the way, in Europe, cannot say that they did not know.
So actually, what you are saying is the information as we get it from you, you also send the same information on the moment you got it to the Dutch government.
Absolutely. We look. First of all, we meet on regular basis with the representatives of every European government here in Israel, which is the ambassadors, right? And we make it's part of what we do, and they are considered the first address, right?
Yeah.
And we, on regular basis, present our research to them and new findings. We make it's a matter of principle to meet with each ambassador at least once a year, so as to keep them up to date. But more than that, we send letters and share our research directly with the ministries of both foreign affairs and development aid in those countries where it's relevant. In the Netherlands, there are two ministries, so that is in some countries development is under the part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but in the Netherlands we have two separate ministries, so we communicate with both of them. And on top of that, we also share our research with elected officials in each of the governments.
So actually, on July 21st, Minister Kaag sent out a press release in which she said that the Dutch government felt sorry that the fact that those terrorists who were financed by the Dutch government, the fact that they killed Rina Schnerp was not clear to the Dutch government. They only knew this on July 20 this year.
Well, that's what they announced, and that's what most of the governments respond. They almost have an automatic response.
Yes.
You know, it's like hit the autopilot button, and it usually sounds something like this.
Yeah.
We have very stringent vetting procedures in place. We know exactly where the money is going, and so on and so on. And this is in response to us saying, you are funding UAWC, and this and this and that person on their board and on their payroll are connected to PFLP, a terror organization. So they did know.
They knew since December last year, I presume.
They knew even before. We've been, the Netherlands have been funding this particular NGO for which Summer Arbid worked, at least since 2013, and the grants were going on until 2021, and now the funding was frozen. And between 2013 and today, the Dutch government transferred at least $20 million, or 19 million euros, approximately, to this NGO.
So, while knowing it was a terrorist organization.
Well, they should have known of the clear connections
because of your information.
Because of our information. After the arrest in December, other organizations joined this cause.
Yes.
So you have a British organization, the UK Lawyers for Israel, who were also sending letters to the Dutch government. We worked also with CD. We provided the research, and some of the outreach to the elected officials was done by them. So we try to find as many ways to raise awareness on this issue, exactly so the government cannot later come back and say we did not know.
So we actually, if I say it in the Dutch way, Minister Kaag was lying.
Well, look, I cannot say that.
I can say it. I can say it.
I can tell you. I think that the issue is always much more complex than that. I think we have in Europe in general there is a huge challenge, and that is just being able to say NGOs can do wrong things too.
Yeah.
We live in Europe is a continent where, especially after the Second World War, everyone wanted to make sure that there is a vibrant, thriving civil society, that every citizen has a way to voice their opinion, and this should have been sort of a complementary check for the government. We want to make sure that our governments are responsible, doing the right things, and so on. So you have a culture. It really is part of the European DNA.
Yeah.
Where governments heavily support NGOs from the best of places.
Yeah.
That on its own is a really good thing. Now you have European governments officially, they don't hide that, but way of promoting Dutch foreign policy or EU foreign policy is through civil society. So supporting financially, but not only NGOs. And all that is great. But where we fail is being able to have a critical discussion and being able to say, if I see that there's evidence that something went wrong, and in this case, something went terribly wrong. Terribly wrong, then we should be able to say, hold on, stop for a second, even though this organization calls itself a human rights or a humanitarian group, we have to stop and look into this.
Yes.
I'll share with you that in 2016 already, a Dutch member of the parliament, Raymond de Roon, he asked for an evaluation whether Dutch funding, it started with a discussion about the EU funding to NGOs, but they demanded an evaluation about Dutch funding to terrorist salaries and terror-linked activities, including funding to NGOs. And it took them a year to run this evaluation. And finally, in November 2016, it was published. And surprising or not, the evaluation was completely based on self-reporting by NGOs, which means if I am an NGO, I fill out a form, I tell you what's my project, right?
Yeah.
Then you say it's a great project, and then when the project is over, I submit a report telling you what a wonderful job I did. And then, as a government, you call that evaluation. So that's not a serious evaluation.
Yes.
But any reference to terror was completely absent from that evaluation. And the evaluation was supposed to cover, a period between 2008 and 2014. So it was supposed to be a very serious evaluation. So I think it's part of a much bigger problem, going back to your question, that governments are not capable of saying NGOs can do wrong too.
Or, I sometimes think they are not afraid to support, let's say, terror organizations. They knew who is the receiver of the money, and they knew it is a terror organization or terror related organization, and they don't care because it's all for the Palestinian cause.
So that the way you're framing it is, very direct. I will probably use slightly different
I'm
words,
not a
but
diplomat. Yeah, I'm not a diplomat, Olga.
well, there is, but definitely,
Yeah,
100% that there is a very problematic and worrying politicization of aid,
yeah,
humanitarian and development aid, meaning as long as you use the word, you're a Palestinian group and you use the word, I am providing human rights, projects or humanitarian aid,
yeah,
you're doing a great job.
yeah,
What you actually do with that is less important, and we are not going to check it as seriously. There is an atmosphere in which the problem goes both ways, right?
yeah,
It's allowing those amongst the Palestinians who want to politicize the whole thing and turn it into a black and white thing, meaning you're either fighting occupation or you don't have a voice in
yes,
the Palestinian society,
yes,
right?
yes, yes,
And the Dutch government, together with many other, unfortunately, European governments and the European Union, they sort of play along without questioning this narrative. But you also have the other side of that coin, and until now, this has nothing to do with Israel. If
no,
there was a status quo forever, we are just focusing now on what is going on in on the Palestinian side. The other side of that coin is really betraying the Palestinian people.
yes,
You have a tremendous human rights situation there, where women don't have equal rights and young people don't have access to employment and education. And, there's so many issues.
yes,
And they don't have a society that even comes close to a sustainable or developed democracy. Yet, the only thing that the European governments and the Dutch government, in our case, is perpetuating, supporting, is this repetitive political message, which is, as long as you fight the occupation, you're great, and we're going to support you. And I think the problem is it's really betraying the Palestinian people
yeah.
before we even get into the Arab-Israeli conflict.
Now there is a rumor, and maybe it has to do with it. There is a rumor already for years, a public rumor, that the people working in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are not specific in favor of Israel. They are more in favor of the Palestinian cause than in favor of the Israeli government. Maybe this has to do with it. I think you have connections also on a regular basis with the Dutch ambassador here in Israel. Yes?
Well, there is a challenge also with the administration. Even before you get to the point of whether they are pro-Israel or pro-Palestinian, no administration is ever interested in changing anything.
No.
So that's a challenge before anything else. But yes, we are, as I mentioned earlier, we meet with ambassadors on a regular basis, and we actually had a weird experience with the Dutch ambassador to Israel, a relatively newly appointed ambassador,
Yes.
where we invited him as one of the first activities for him since he assumed the position in Tel Aviv is to speak at our annual conference, which took place in December 2019. It was on a completely different issue. It was about the combating anti-Semitism. And, just to give you an idea of the level of the conference, we had Ilan Carr, the U.S. State Department's envoy on combating anti-Semitism as a keynote speaker. We had Bougie Herzog, who was the He used to be the head of the opposition in Israel,
Yes, yes,
and is now the chair of the Jewish Agency. We had
yes.
many officials and elected officials here in Israel. We invited him to speak on a panel together with a journalist and other diplomats, and we actually approached him saying we would like to talk about some of the policy changes that were best case, like good things the Dutch government did in the past couple of years. He said yes, but last minute they called literally a day before. They called to cancel, telling us that the ambassador was ill.
Uh-huh.
But the weird thing, which we always we wish him all the best of health, and we wished him a speedy recovery. But it was very funny because while they were telling us this, the ambassador was tweeting pictures from his visit with another NGO just on the other side of the political discourse, and what a wonderful meeting they had. It's worth mentioning that also the ambassador, he would very openly share tweets and help other NGOs to fundraise money. So there is an issue there. I think it's part of the problem of not being able to have an open and direct discussion.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know if
in short, to make it clear to the listeners, the ambassador he canceled the event because he was ill, and the next day, instead of coming to you, he was going to or
on the
attending
same
and
on the same day.
on the
He
same
was
day.
yeah,
He
he
was
was
attending another conference of an NGO in Jerusalem.
yeah. Well, they asked for a meeting the day before the conference to
Yes.
discuss the panel, and they canceled an hour before they were supposed to come to our offices in Jerusalem.
Yes.
And while they were canceling, he was tweeting images from meetings with other NGOs in Jerusalem. So we we saw he was well enough to take those photos.
Yes.
So but again,
that NGO, was it a pro-Palestinian NGO or a leftist?
it was an NGO that is very critical of the Israeli government and establishment.
Okay. It says enough, no?
Well,
in my opinion. But
look, there was also earlier this year there was an obsessive attempt in the Dutch Parliament to attack our research. There was I think something like 20. I'm not giving you an exact number, but it was a crazy number, something like 20 requests for freedom of information that were sent to the foreign ministry in the Netherlands,
yes.
Asking them particularly about NGO Monitor and our research, and are they taking our research seriously? And actually, in one of the responses, the official responses, the foreign minister actually said that yes, they're aware of our research and they don't take our research seriously. In these words, okay? And I think that's really the core of the issue.
That's the problem.
Well, it's more than a problem. On one hand, you have a Dutch ambassador, helping one NGO who is very critical of the Israeli policies,
yes.
fundraise, on his Twitter account, and at the same time, just because you might not like what NGO Monitor is saying, you have the Minister of Foreign Affairs in the public document, an official document, saying yes, we know their research is not serious. All this only to lead, less than 6 months later, to the government freezing funds and opening an external investigation exactly based on that same research of ours.
Yes.
So I think that sort of pinpoints the core of the problem.
That is absolutely true. This is the center of the whole problem. Maybe they were forced to take that decision. Although I don't believe that the money is still frozen. Knowing the Dutch government, they found other ways to transfer the millions again to this organization. I'm sure of that.
Joop, we checked and the Dutch government does release, not real time, obviously, but you can track the information, and most of the funding, in the moment when the Dutch government announced that they were freezing funds to this to UAWC, this NGO,
Yeah.
most of the funding that was supposed to be transferred was already transferred. So only a very
Exactly.
small portion was left frozen.
Exactly.
But
But we are talking here about money from the Dutch taxpayer.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
it's good for all those thousands of listeners to know and to hear from you now at this very moment what is done with their tax money. And because next year there are elections in Holland, they should take this absolutely in account. Uh,
I I agree with you, and I just want to say, because we spend most of the time talking about the loopholes and challenges and what are the problems. With everything that we said, it's still a major thing that the Dutch government did.
yes,
Okay, the
yes,
question it's a huge political precedent that will, we hope, also motivate and push others to take a much more serious check and look at the organizations that they fund. The name of the game now will be moving forward how serious the investigation that the Dutch government announced it will do, how serious it will be. If it's only checking, because normally the government will say we have the top world accounting companies checking, but this is not an accounting issue. The question is not whether money went, to a purpose it was not supposed to go to. It is a much more dangerous and much more delicate and complicated thing on one hand, but it is something that, unless done seriously, this will be a one-off, example of, call it accountability and due diligence. But the Dutch government, just like other governments, will end up in the same situation in the future unless there is an actual change in how they look at who they fund
yeah.
and whether they check it all.
But, to be honest to you, I don't believe that they are checking. I don't believe at all.
Well,
I
that
just
is something
I just
that
don't believe
you
it. But I know there are several members of parliament listening to this podcast because they are using the website JoodsNL as a source of information for them. So also this podcast. And I hope that if one or two of them are asking questions to the government and specific to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Minister Kaag of Development. Because
well,
this cannot go on like this. It's about tens of millions of euros.
at the end of the day, Joop, it is in your hands. We are an Israeli organization that does research. Our
Yes,
job is to pinpoint where the
exactly.
problem is. At
Exactly.
the end of the day, this is a conversation that is a very Dutch conversation. It is
Absolutely.
about Dutch public funds and taxpayers' money, and also the Dutch government's goodwill to go and do good elsewhere in the world and promote worthy causes. But the question is the money spent on what it was intended to, which is to do good things? And also, are you entrusting your money? And it's not only the money, it's the reputation. All these programs go with the Dutch logo on it.
Yeah. But I can
To people you can trust.
I can tell you I did an interview with Minister Kaag when she was in Tel Aviv in January this year, and I asked her specific, also because of the articles we published, let's say between October and December last year. How are you checking where your money is going to? And then she said, "Oh, we have a whole system in place and it is checked." I said, "Yes, but," and then I confronted her with your information in our articles. And she said, yeah, maybe we should check double. We should put another system in place. But it is good to know that something is maybe wrong. So we will check it, and it is still in a podcast from January. So then I say 101 is not 2, 101 is 3, and she is lying. She is just lying, telling, knowing what is going on, but acting like she didn't know. And that is a serious problem. That's a serious problem for the Dutch government.
Well, that is really that is an internal Dutch thing, and
Yeah,
but I think one issue is a universal issue for any citizen, and that is our right and our responsibility to
yeah,
hold our governments and elected officials accountable,
yeah,
uh, because we entrust them with a lot, and it is not only the funds. We entrust them with leading us and doing things on our behalf.
yes,
And going back to that civil society, and how the checks and balances and how the government and the civil society work together. I think holding governments accountable is an incremental part of democracy, and just like we do in Israel, we have to do the same here. I think you have all the right to demand accountability from your leaders.
absolutely. Absolutely. They are elected by the public, and the public has the right to get all the information, the right information from them, and not lies.
Let's hope that this freeze of funding and the announcement of an external independent evaluation with enough public pressure from you, from your listeners,
Yes,
from elected officials, will pave a way to a more serious discussion about this and hopefully a change.
I hope so. I hope so, because the information you just gave us is very important and not known by the general public. And
Thank you very much.
this is very important. Thank you for your time. I know you are so busy, and I'm looking forward to receive the next report from you, so we can publish it again, because we keep putting our fingers on this painful spot, so to say, because painful it is. It's a little bit ashamed. I feel a little bit ashamed also, because if people are not honest, if people you cannot trust them anymore, it's a bad situation. It's a very bad situation. So,
Well, I hope it's not always easy, but I think it's a part of it's a must part of democracy.
yeah,
It's also having difficult discussions.
yeah,
We don't always have to agree, but we have to be able to give each other respect and the
exactly.
benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
That not the only because I don't agree with someone's political views, I dismiss everything he or she is saying. And I think that's a major part of this conversation. And
yes.
I thank you for reaching out and for giving us the opportunity to speak in more details about this important issue and about the work that we do at NGO Monitor.
It's our pleasure. And on behalf of over 50,000 listeners, go
Amazing.
do your work, do it the way you do it now, because it's great work, and we support you all. We all support
and
you.
and you keep up doing your amazing work,
I
because it's
will.
only together.
I
We
will.
are
Yes, for
the
sure.
content, but you are the vehicle to reaching the public. So thank you
Absolutely.
again so much.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you very much, Olga. And already Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Bye.
Bye bye.
Ja, dat was Olga Deutsch. En ik moet u zeggen, ik ben nogal geschrokken hiervan. In het kort, de Nederlandse regering wist dus waar dat het geld naar terroristenorganisaties ging. Ze zeggen dat ze het onderzoeken, terwijl ze dat al jaren wisten. De minister van Buitenlandse Zaken, meneer Blok, zegt, ach, die rapporten, die berichten, die onderzoeken van NGO Monitor, ik geloof ze niet, het stelt allemaal niks voor. Terwijl ze dat wel als argument gebruiken naar buiten toe op 20 juli dit jaar, om te zeggen, we gaan een onderzoek starten. Nou, dan weet je al welke kant dat onderzoek uitgaat. En daarnaast hebben we een Nederlandse ambassadeur in Israël die een afspraak afzegt omdat hij ziek is en niet kan verschijnen op een panel van NGO Monitor. Maar dezelfde dag, na het ontvangen van de beste wensen voor zijn gezondheid van NGO Monitor, dezelfde dag dus vrolijk bij een NGO gaat zitten in Jeruzalem, die anti-Israël is. Dat zijn punten waarvan ik zeg, daar schrik ik van. En ik vind dat dit door parlementsleden in de Tweede Kamer moet worden uitgezocht. Laat mij u voor de rest een hele fijne rest van de dag toewensen. Alvast Shabbat Shalom vanuit Israël. Denk hierover na als u deze podcast heeft beluisterd. Heeft u vragen, u kunt ze altijd even stellen aan ons. En wij kunnen ze dan doorzenden aan Olga Deutsch. En wij komen hier zeker nog op terug. Wat mij betreft, alvast Shabbat Shalom vanuit Israël. En maandag ben ik er weer. Dus zeg ik tot ziens, tot maandag.